As you see, outside of Ayodhya, some distance, is the place where Bharata made his residence for 14 years, while on behalf of Ramachandra, he ruled the capital of Ayodhya and the whole kingdom of Koshala without a mobile phone. This is the place. Of course, time and eons have passed since he actually resided here. And there's a devotee who lives here in Ayodhya, disciple of Radhanath Maharaj, who informed us that the government of UP has taken a beginning kind of interest in restoring some of the places that had become very much deteriorated. Government money and effort to restore Bharata Kund, and what I'm sure it wasn't nice, and now it's very nice, very large and very deep, and the water in that Kund, by government arrangement, comes from the river Sarayu, some duct or some method of bringing Sarayu water here. A plan by the same government to have a direct road that goes from Ayodhya to Chitrakoot, so pilgrims can visit those places, and so forth and so on. So there's some very nice, there's some interest beyond, some agency, or the government is actually doing what the government should be doing, protecting principles of Dharma. And he shared with us on the way that we saw the deity of Lord Nrsingadev. His grandfather made the arrangement for the deity of Lord Nrsingadev. And there was a young man, Babaji Sadhu, who wanted to worship Lord Nrsingadev. That same old man is there, hobbling along, someday going to expire, and who's going to continue the worship, they don't know, but this devotee lives in Ayodhya and explained, what's not at all a surprise to me, that in the city of Ayodhya, which is where Ram ruled for 11,000 years and Bharata ruled on his behalf for 14 years, in Ayodhya, special appreciation goes to Hanuman and to Bharata, more so even than Ram. It's interesting, but in one sense, not at all a surprise. So we're going to be hearing for the second time something further about Bharata, and then again when we go to Chitrakoot. So some details will come when we reach Chitrakoot. The sandals, the final solution to the petition of Bharata for Ram to return and rule, and that he would stay in the forest for 14 years, accompanied by Shatrughna. Ram's reply is, each of us have our duty given by our father, and my father said to go to the forest for 14 years, and he said, you become the king, so we should each do our duty, not switch. Bharata gave a counter-argument. What he said wasn't right. Ram said he's the king, and Kaikeyi is the queen, and they have every right to say what they want. It was not wrong. It was right. They have the right, and they exercise their right, and we should follow what they say. So, who's right and who's wrong about principles of Dharma? But it was a mood of love, and that's the main feature for which Bharata is honored. So some messages about Bharata. It is said that when Kaikeyi accepted the payasam, the fruit of that putra yagya, putra kameshti yagya that was performed by Rishishringa, she received her portion, and her meditation at the time was, I want to have a son who will have the mood of complete dedication and service to the Supreme Lord, to his elder brother Ram, as it turns out. And so Bharata became exactly that. He fulfilled that expectation of hers. And his name, when Vashishta gave the names for each of the individuals, we discussed this earlier, but now repeating. Bharata, of course, it can have different meanings, but one of the meanings that was appropriate for Bharata was one who has an unlimited capacity to carry burden of responsibility. And responsibility unto whom? Because there's different ideas of what responsibility is and responsibility to whom. But for Bharata, there was no uncertainty about to whom. It was to Ram. And that was his mood. It's very special. It's the mood of service, but the mood of service was also there with Lakshmana. And the mood of Bharata in service to Ram was the mood of carrying the burden of responsibility unto Ram. So the commentators describe it this way. A servant wants to serve, but they also make some choices when they're making their service plan. But an instrument doesn't make any choices. The instrument just does according to the wielder of the instrument. And that's their mood. They're fastened to, they're fastidiously absorbed in and attached to and meditating upon the interest of their superior. The moods of Bharata were never moved by circumstance. It was always, what would Ram want? A very nice example of this, we'll repeat it later. When Bharata returns to Ayodhya, hearing that he's been called, and he hears Kaikeyi's message. Bharata was very strong in his words with Kaikeyi, but he could have taken actions that were stronger and just banished her, because he had the authority to do that. He didn't. He scolded her and chastised her and spoke strongly. But when there's a scene in Valmiki Ramayana where one of the ministers brings Manthara, who Manthara is now decorated by Kaikeyi with gold and a golden chain on her hunchback, and happy as happy can be. And she comes walking by, and the minister grabs her and brings her before Bharata and Shatrughna and says, this is the cause of all of this disaster. Shatrughna physically grabs her and starts to take her to punish her, and Bharata stops. Not that she shouldn't be punished, but he said, we should never do anything other than what Ram would want. Ram would not want mantra to be punished, killed, or treated in some physical, harmful way. Ram would not approve. Release her. His meditation as a servant of Ram was as an instrument of the will of Ram. He wouldn't do anything. His actions were always responsible, and it was always with the consideration of what Ram would want. Lakshmana only wanted to do what Ram would want, but he made arguments against what Ram would want to say what he thinks Ram should want. And he would ultimately accept what Ram said, but for Bharata, proximity to Ram wasn't important. For Lakshmana, proximity to Ram was everything. And for Bharata, it was, what does Ram want? Now, he was willing to try to persuade Ram to want in a certain way, but ultimately, he couldn't do anything other than what Ram wanted. We'll repeat this when we go to Chitrakoot, but when he tried to persuade Ram to return, and it was very clear Ram wouldn't return, he said that I'm going to fast till death. I'm going to set up a place, a sacred place right here at Chitrakoot, and requested Sumitra to set it up. Sumitra didn't take the instruction from Ram, so he didn't do it. So he did it himself and sat down ready to fast till death, and Ram said, you're a Kshatriya, not a Brahmin, you can't do this. Stand up. So he stood up. Because he can't do anything other than be the instrument of Ram. That mood of service. And he accepted, true to his name, he accepted the burden. Now, burden sounds like a negative thing, but the burden for him, it was his life. It wasn't, burdensome life. It was feeling the weight and gravity of what his responsible conduct was. And he was governed by that. That was his mood. The Sri Vaishnava Acharyas call this para tantriyam. Paratantriyam means completely dependent upon the discretion of Ram. He didn't need to be with Ram, he needed to know what Ram really wanted, and then he just became the instrument of what Ram really wanted. In turn, Bharata, their terminology is Bhagavata Paratantriyam. And that is, Shatrughna was the loyal servant of Bharata, who was the loyal servant of whatever Ram wanted. Or in our Gaudiya Vaishnava message, Das Dasanudas, the servant of the servant. So wherever Bharata would go, Shatrughna would go. Bharata went to stay with his maternal grandfather, so Shatrughna went with him. Although didn't have the same mother, it wasn't the same relative. He just was fastidiously loyal in the mood of the servant, and Bharata was the servant of Ram. So Shatrughna is particularly glorious, but special honor goes to Bharata. Bharata was the one. Bharata was the one that was in the whole drama chosen to become the king in Ram's absence. he had to bear the burden of the kingdom, but that was his joy, was responsibly carrying out the duties of the kingdom under Ram, and under Ram was represented in authority in the form of the sandals or the shoes or the padukas of Ram, where he had placed his feet for just a moment, but that was enough. I am the servant of Ram, and I will serve Ram as the king under him and assist him in his duty as being the king of Ayodhya and the ruler of the Koshala kingdom of the Ikshvaku dynasty. But he also had to bear the burden of infamy. On the one hand, that he was loath to have any connection at all with becoming the ruler. And that was his glory, we'll hear shortly. He's honored for that. Well, we'll say it specifically. Think about it. People that are in the modern democratic system striving to become an elected ruler, say, here in India, Prime Minister, or some other parts of the world, some other position, president or whatever it is in other countries. How much they strive and endeavor and struggle and endure and craft and finagle. And in Bhart's case, he didn't have to do anything. He just was on a vacation, taking care of his grandfather. He came back, the whole kingdom is yours. When Kaikeyi told him, the kingdom is yours, not even for a fraction of a second did he consider her idea. What a horrible thought. How could you think such a horrible thought? Immediately his affection went to Kaushalya. How will Kaushalya feel? He spoke of Kaushalya as his superior mother. And Kaushalya accepted you as her sister. And you want to have Kaushalya's son banished? How abominable. What is your character? Very enthusiastic. So we'll go back. We'll capture this point again. Distraction is difficult. He had to deal with infamy. We'll discuss the infamy and how he responded to it. Kaikeya kingdom was ruled by Ashvapati, and as we heard, 12 years after Ram and the boys had returned to Ayodhya, his son, Kaikeyi's brother, had come to bring him to spend time with his maternal grandfather, Yudhajit. So he went. And it was while there that he heard the news. Well, actually, he was called back to Ayodhya, unsuspecting at all of anything that happened. And he had stayed there for a long time. Now, previously, when the messenger had come from Janaka to invite Dasarath to come for a wedding of his son Ram, there wasn't this idea that the others would also become married. Lakshmana was already there, but Bharata and Shatrughna came, and as we heard, at the suggestion of Vishwamitra Muni and the approval of Vashishta, Bharata became married. But he had this, his wife's name was Mandavi. But even right after the marriage, he went to his maternal grandfather's kingdom, Kaikeya kingdom. There's strong connection there. Yet when he came back and heard that this dastardly thing has done, he immediately rejected the whole matter. Dasarath informed Ram before the coronation that was planned for Ram, I didn't invite Bharata and Shatrughna because although they have such love for you, according to what Dasarath had considered wrongly and unfortunately, the minds of men are fickle. When he comes back, he may be unhappy because Dasarath knew that Dasarath had made a promise to the king, Kaikeya king. He had previously had 2 wives, Kaushali and Sumitra. There were no sons for some years. So the younger of the 3 queens, Kaikeyi, the king had agreed that my daughter can marry you on one condition, that her son will become the ruler after that son is born. Not the first son that's born, but whoever her son, whatever the order or sequence, her son will be born. Her son will become king. And Dasarath considered, well, I really don't have any expectation that they will have sons from these other 2 queens. And so he gave his word. Dasarath knew. And Dasarath knew that Bharata knew. And Bharata might have some resistance to Ram becoming the successor king. And so he didn't invite him. He was mistaken. And it was politically also a big mistake because that was taken advantage of by Manthara. When Bharata returned and heard this message from Kaikeyi, his father died. Ram is banished to the forest for 14 years. And you're to become king. So what did he do wrong? What's sinful activity? Oh, he didn't do anything wrong. Just, I had requested your father for fulfillment of 2 boons, and I wanted you to become the king. And Ram go to the forest. Shameful. Foolish. Super foolish. The first time that she cried, she didn't cry when Ram went to the forest. She didn't even cry when her husband died. She cried when Bharata said, I will go to the forest, and I'll live wearing tree bark and eat roots and berries, and Ram will come back to become the king. And she cried. Because only then did she understand the horrible mistake that she made. Bharata said, because of your greed, you're blind to the fact of how much I have love for Ram. I would never consider this. Ram is the king, and I will go to the forest, and I'll bring him back. And shame will forever hang on you. But the shame that hung on Kaikeyi was then in turn hanging on Ram. there were, aside from his mother, who he had already said, you should forever go to hell. He said it. For a sin this grievous, you've killed your husband, and you sent the dear son of your elder co-queen to the forest. Sinless, perfect Ram. Your destination is forever in hell. So, having rejected her, there were 4 other people that were really important to him. And the infamy of what Kaikeyi's action spread to Bharata. He had to demonstrate to them, as painful as it was to hear what they had to say, that he had nothing to do with this. It was not at all his intention. He had just the opposite intention. So after hearing the bad words of Kaikeyi, he then went to see Kaushalya with Shatrughna. And Kaushalya heard their voices from a distance before even seeing them. And so she turned and approached them and said with sarcasm, "So, Bharat, are you now happy that you're ruling the kingdom? The kingdom is yours." She didn't say all the rest of what she was feeling. Are you happy that your father is now dead? Are you happy that Ram, your dear, most beloved elder brother, is banished to the forest because of you? She didn't say that. Are you happy to be ruler of the kingdom? And Bharata didn't say, "Kaushalya, why are you speaking these harsh things? It's not true." Rather, he said what was in his heart. And what was in his heart is, I want to bring Ram back to become the king. So she knows Dasarath has entrusted the kingdom to Bharat, and Bharat is telling her, I want to bring Ram back to become the king. He couldn't consider enjoying something that belonged to Ram. Anything. The wife of Ram, or the property of Ram, or the kingdom. The kingdom is Ram's kingdom. There's no possible way I could become the enjoyer of that which is the property of Ram. Then came Guha. Now, Guha, dear friend of Ram, although his occupation wasn't so nice, but dear friend of Ram. And when he went to the capital city, Shringhavarapur, we'll go there, Guha greeted him. And he greeted him respectfully. But I see this big army. What is your intention? Do you intend in bringing harm to Ram? He asked directly. The infamy went to Bharata for an act of his mother, and he had to bear the burden of that infamy. He was very, very direct and said, I find abominable anyone that had any part of this plan to exile Ram. I want to bring Ram back and become the king. That's my intention. You're asking my intention? That's my intention. Guha was not only astonished, he was very pleased. He said, I see no one on the face of the earth that when a kingdom is gifted to them with no effort on their behalf, they refuse to accept it and want someone else to take that position. Your fame will be spread throughout the world for all time for this noble act of yours. I will surely help you find Ram. That evening they spent at the place where Ram had taken rest, and he was asking Guha, where did Ram rest? And he showed there's where the remains of the kusha grass, where Sita and Ram slept on the ground. Bharata broke down crying. Ram, who is deserving of celestial, palatial, majestic treatment and facility, is sleeping on the ground, on grass, with Sita by his side. From this day forward, I will also sleep on the ground and have matted locks and wear clothing of tree bark. And so this place over here is a representation of what Bharata did, from what I understand. Bharata slept on the ground, so he slept in some hole in the ground, like a cave or a little dwelling space like that. So he would be lower than Ram. And he knew the time that Ram would get up, and he would get up before Ram would get up and call his name, so he could wake Ram. His mood was like that, just for the pleasure of Ram. So Guha told him, he went in the direction of the ashram of Bharadraj Muni. When he got to the ashram of Bharadraj Muni said the same thing. Why this big army? What is your intention? Bharadraj Muni, the intimate disciple of Valmiki Muni, a very exalted personality, questioning his integrity. He had to do it one more time, say to Bharadraj Muni, I had no idea. I was out of the city when all of this intrigue happened, and I came back to find this horrible deed done by my mother, abominable activity of my mother, and I am going now to bring Ram back. He wanted to know where did he go, because Guha said he came here. From here, where did he go? Where can I find him? Bharadraj Muni said, I actually knew. By my Brahminical power, I knew. I just wanted to see how you would respond to my question. And you're very noble. And I honor you. And he went to Chitrakoot mountain. Then as he's going the fourth, his dear brother Lakshman, when they saw from a distance the approaching army, we'll just touch on little points because when we go to Chitrakoot we'll go through more detail. They saw the whole approaching army. Bharata had made a road that went to the Ganga so they could get to where Ram was. And when Lakshman climbed the tree at the instruction of Ram to see what flag was flying, and he saw the flag of the Ikshvaku dynasty, but he didn't see the white umbrella of Dasarath. So then he, put 2 and 2 together and got 16. He's come to destroy us. How mighty are my arms, I'll destroy him, I'll kill him, I'll kill Bharata, and I'll kill Shatrughna and anybody else that stands in the way of your becoming king. Let's go back to Ayodhya and become king. We'll hear in Chitrakoot what Ram has to say to that. He said, I know the heart of Bharata, and he's come here to try to persuade me to go back to Ayodhya and become the king. I know the heart of Bharata. And how is it possible that I could rule Ayodhya without any one of you? Bharata, Shatrughna, or you, Lakshmana. Lakshmana, if you're anxious, we'll ask, you can become the king. Just say it, say the word, and we'll make you the king. He was so embarrassed. No. I got carried away. And finally, the burden capacity of Bharata was finally arranged that by his suggestions, so many persons tried, and Ram wouldn't budge from his position of upholding the word of his father. Of course, there's another higher purpose, that is the killing of Ravana, and this exile made that possible, and ridding the forest of so many Rakshasas, which was another purpose, and so many multiple purposes. Upholding the word of his father, upholding truth, not only his own word, but the word of his father, upholding the word of his father. He wouldn't budge. So the sandals, and bringing the sandals back, and bringing the sandals here, and installing them, and worshipping them, and ruling from this distance, he somehow was able to keep in touch with the ministers in the capital city, although it's a little bit of a distance. Somehow that happened. And he ruled for 14 years. He told Ram, if you don't come back, at the end of 14 years, I'll take my life. So when it was the 14th year was about to expire, Ram had to hurry back. Took the Pushpaka Vimana and zoom, it came right back. And sent Hanuman ahead. Maybe over these 14 years, Bharata has changed his mind. We'll stay here. You go as an emissary and just examine the mood of Bharata, because you're really expert as a minister and you can understand quickly. He understood quickly. Bharata was eagerly awaiting the return of Ram. So then Hanuman knew he could disclose, Ram is coming. Just now coming. Just down the road in the Pushpaka Vimana. Come on, get on board, let's go. And then Diwali, entrance back into Ayodhya at night with so many lights. So, I was told, it was too much light to see, but just this year was the first time in many, many years that because of the involvement of the government of UP, that they had a fantastic Diwali festival with tens of thousands of lamps lit, spread near the Sarayu River, and it hasn't been done like that, but, the government of UP is making some effort to restore sacred places that have been neglected for some time. And of course, in our Gaudiya tradition, the restoring of places in Vrindavan has gone on. Prabhupada made that effort to have a trust established where places of Mahaprabhu's pastimes, not under the control of ISKCON, but ISKCON funds could help restore some of the places of Mahaprabhu's pastimes. So it's nice that the government is doing a good thing like that. So now I request, where is he? Could you say, because he shared something about how people in Ayodhya have particular affection for Bharata. So I wanted him to say something about that. Current time. He was reluctant, but I insisted. So he's in the mood of Bharata. He's trying to be the instrument.
As Maharaj said, instrument has no choice. I'm not qualified to speak on these matters. So these are little details which I like to share with you all. So first is like the place is in Nandi Gram, the village Nandi. How it is known as a Nandi Gram? Because Nandi ji did a lot of austerity here before Bharata Maharaj came to become the vehicle of Lord Shiva. So he did a lot of austerity here. And then Bharat Maharaj, as Maharaj was telling, when he returned from Chitrakoot, so he just stopped at this place and he selected this place to rule Ayodhya because he's in the mood of doing austerity. Becoming king, he's taken the responsibility as austerity. So because that environment is there, so he just stopped here and just installed the Sri Ram's Paduka as a king. You must have seen the mukut on and ruled from here. Taken the responsibility of the king, but rejected the facilities of the king. So after 14 years ruling here, when Lord came back, first one more pastime took place here when Hanumanji was bringing this mountain. So Bharat saw from here and he thought it as some demon. So he shooted arrow from here. And the Hanumanji then came down with the mountain. And then they met and there is a beautiful Hanuman and Bharat Milap took place here. And then again he went with Sanjeevani Booty. So before Lord Ram came here, he sent Hanumanji, just go there and inform Bharat, we are coming here. So Hanumanji came here. So here Hanuman and Bharat Milap Murti deities are also here. And then Lord Ram came here. And there is one Pishach Kund nearby here, just south to this Bharat Kund. So one saying is there, Nasau Kashi na ek Pishachi. If you take bath 100 times in Varanasi and you take once on this Pishach Mochan, it's equal. So Lord Ram was, because Lord 27, water from the 27 tirthas are brought and it is put into that kunda, and then Lord Ram's, because his hairs were matted and all this, so it is opened and cleaned there also. And because he killed Brahmana, so to absolve that sin, he took bath here. Pishach Kund it's 1.5 kilometers from here. And one more thing was there. After Bharat Kund, Bharat ji, because he used to take bath here, that's why his kund becomes a Bharat Kund. And like a small stream comes to the Sarayu river to a river, and from there it is directed to this kunda. Previously this kund was very, very in a bad position, but because of the government's initiative, as Maharaj told, now it is becoming a little beautiful.
Can you describe the mood, the current residents in Ayodhya and their mood of appreciating Bharata especially?
Yeah. So, the mood of Ayodhya Vasis, our Vasis, they are more into the glorifying Hanuman ji and the Bharat ji. Everywhere, if you go, you will find the worshippers of the Hanuman ji. And as you know, through the devotees only we get the mercy of the Lord. And Lord Ram installed as a Hanuman ji as a king of the Ayodhya. And Bharat ji's sacrifice was discussed everywhere. Just like in Braj, they discuss in that way that they are just associates and they say anything to Krishna and everyone. So the Avadvasis also, they discuss this. And many times they used to fight between them. भक्त देरी के राम का त्याग की है, त्याग तो भरत जी के है, लक्ष्मण जी के है, राम जी तो मेहरारू के साथ रहे. He was living with his consort. So Bharat is more glorified because of his service mode and his sacrifice. And Hanuman ji similar, his mode of service and sacrifice. So one more, Prabhuji was telling me, there is a Gaya Pindadan. This is Vishnu ji's one right leg is here and left leg is in Gaya. So one who does a Shraddha ceremony, who starts from here, he does first Tarpan Shraddha from here and ends in Gaya. And one who starts from the Gaya, they end doing the here only. And the, like a punya which we get is both way same. This one.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I was appreciating your nice kirtan. We just starve you and don't feed you lunch and have kirtan instead, and we'll have nice kirtan. But we'll get to lunch soon.
Hare Krishna. Two announcements. One is these flags were given to all the bus leaders by Parjanya Prabhu.